Hello, and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Genshin Impact. My name is Azwark, and today we're going to do a dive into a quick back-of-the-envelope impression of what each of the characters are good for. Please remember Rules 1 and 2 of Genshin Impact, and see the previous video for other disclaimers about this process. This should not be used as your single source of data on whether a character is good or not, because every member of the community, myself included, has interesting notions on what classifies as good or bad. Many players take the stance that any character that is the best of the best is good, and anything else, even if it's almost as valuable, is bad. So please don't take anything you hear too seriously without additional points of reference. We're going through early 4 stars today, and alphabetically that means we'll start with Beidou. One of my personal favorites. Beidou is deceptive. She seems like she should be used as an on-field damage dealer, but she's actually better used as an offensive support. Her elemental skill is a counterattack, which requires some skill to make maximum use of. But the real focal point of her mechanics is her burst, which causes her to deal electro damage to any enemy that you hit with a normal attack. Not only that, but the damage will bounce to a second nearby enemy if there is one, and then jump once more. It can return to the same target twice, but her burst is much less powerful against single enemies. Her first 2 constellations are both significant upgrades, with the first providing a shield, and the second upping the number of bounces on the chain lightning. She is best played with an electro teammate to help her energy needs. Next up is Bennett. There's no getting around this. Bennett is one of the best characters in the game. His elemental burst puts a circle on the ground that heals a character standing in it. The healing is swift and strong, but it tops out at 70% of the character's max HP. At that point, the character instead receives an enormous attack buff instead. This buff is so powerful that the entire game was warped around the use of Bennett until version 3.0 and the release of Dendro. The reason we have characters whose damage is based on stats other than attack is so they wouldn't work with Bennett. It's that good. I don't like using him, and I'm sick of hearing about the guy, but it would be massively irresponsible of me to not tell you the simple truth. If you have Bennett, you should probably use him. On top of all that, his elemental skill is on a short cooldown if you tap it, and it generates good energy that can easily be funneled to other characters. The only thing you really need for Bennett to function is a weapon with a high attack stat and enough energy recharge to get his burst back on cooldown. As long as you don't mind being on 70% health, he can be your sole defensive option too, or pair him with, say, Xingqiu to cap out the rest. Bennett's first constellation will give you the attack buff even if your character is healing. His C6 is an interesting topic of conversation we'll save for another day. From the highest of the high to the middest of mid, we have Chongyun. There are 3 Cryo 4 stars who are roughly comparable: Kaya, Chongyun, and Rosaria. Of them, my personal take is that Chongyun is the weakest of the 3. As a Claymore user, he'll shatter any frozen enemies, which can be a liability. His main gimmick is replacing your melee character's physical damage with cryo, which can be used for some interesting results. His burst is just a decent damage nuke, so with him in your team, the focus should be on deciding how to leverage that cryo conversion, which means probably supporting a pyro carry like Diluc or Gaming. Fischl is die Prinzessin der awful German pronunciations and handler of the Raven Oz. In fact, everything Fischl does is centered around Oz, to the extent that the joke in the community is that Oz is the real character. Fischl's skill summons Oz, who parks himself and shoots little birdie turret electro damage missiles. Her burst also summons Oz, identical to the skill, but with a brief animation first where she flies around as Oz, which is almost always best to cancel out of by switching characters. Fischl is an extremely good off-field damage dealer, or sub-DPS. Not only will she supplement your team with electro damage and whatever reactions those provide, but Oz gets bonus attacks when an electro reaction occurs and generates a pretty healthy amount of energy for the team. Fischl is especially good in quicken teams, but is also a staple of electro charge-oriented comps, aka Taser, as well. Ningguang is a Geocatalyst main damage dealer whose main liability is that normal attacks from Catalyst users available in version 1.0 are extremely slow and cumbersome. Her main attack is supposed to alternate between basic attacks and charge attacks, which, if done correctly, won't cost any energy. Her skill summons a screen that blocks projectiles and hits enemies it's summoned on top of, and her burst sends out a wave of projectiles, plus even more if it can destroy the screen. Still, despite being the leader of Liyue, who was probably intended to originally be a 5-star, Ningguang's design does not lend itself to the high damage numbers one might expect. She is a competent damage dealer, but doesn't pair well with other elements because she's Geo, and does require a fair bit of practice to use effectively. Razor, hit hard. Use lightning, plus sword. Sword, good. Razor like ice. Give strong help to Razor's damage. Players used to like Razor. Razor not understand where they all go. Razor, sad and alone. Sucrose is an Animo Catalyst support with grouping potential and plenty of use cases, but gets easily overlooked in favor of the 5-star Kazuha. Anytime someone suggests using Kazuha, Sucrose is usually a perfectly acceptable substitute, which is on a lot of teams. At higher levels, players love to use Animo characters with a particular artifact set, Viridescent Venerer, which lowers enemy resistances. However, the one team Sucrose is best known for is Taser, which features other characters providing Hydro and Electro from off-field, and Sucrose swirling them for tons of reaction damage. As unassuming as she appears, don't ignore her potential. Xingqiu is another very strong 4-star support option who you've seen me use in B-roll footage. Hydro is widely regarded as the best element in the game, and it's earned its place there initially on the back of Xingqiu. He, and yes, Xingqiu is a he, has a skill that hits very hard but on an uncommonly long cooldown, but goes a decent way toward meeting his high energy needs. Even better is if you can get your hands on a sacrificial sword for him so he can do it twice. However, the focal point is Xingqiu's burst. During the burst, every time you press the attack button, it will summon several swords that deal hydro damage. Not only is the damage pretty good, but because there are several of them hitting, it gets around some of those pesky rules regarding internal cooldown, meaning he applies enough hydro to produce consistent reactions without delay, for characters like Hu Tao. He is every pyro carry's best friend, is used in Electrocharge and Bloom teams, and can potentially even be used in Freeze. Because of all his use cases, he has at times been considered the best character in the game, and the only reason people don't talk about him more today is because Yelan and Furina exist. Oh, and those little swords swirling around your character, they reduce the damage your character takes and help prevent getting knocked back, after which they give a little bit of healing. Yeah, Xingqiu can do basically anything. And in the interest of time, we're going to go out on a high note and save Xingqiu for later, as well as Diona, Rosaria, and whoever else comes next. So, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.